Hi, my name is Christine Wise, and this is my video for Module 1 for AEP 880, Cultural Diversity. All right, so just a little bit about me. I live in Loveland, Ohio, which is right outside of Cincinnati. Lived there my whole life. Went to school a couple other different places, but I am definitely what we call a townie, and I grew up here, and I ended up moving back and raising my family here. So I am married. I have 4 kids, Kyle, Ava, Grant, and Ellery. And so they're 10, 9, 5, and 3. So we have a busy, loud household. My husband is a principal at a neighboring elementary building. So it's really great just to have his support and feedback when we're discussing things student related or school related. So that's always really nice to have. Like I said, I went to 2 different universities. I started my college education at University of Tennessee. So I'm a huge Volunteers football fan and love the SEC. And I graduated from University of Cincinnati in education. So I am also a runner. I've done 2 full marathons. My most recent one was actually last year. I'm sorry, 2 years ago, 2018. And then I think I've done around 10 half marathons. But something fun I like to do with my girlfriends and just kind of a hobby of mine to get outside and just kind of let my mind run free for a little bit. So I love to travel. I haven't done that in a while, obviously because of COVID, but definitely a hobby and interest of mine. And then I am a soccer coach for our select local club soccer team. And my daughter, Ava, she plays on the team. So my friend and I have coached the girls soccer team even from when they started say soccer and were 3 years old. So it's something I love and love coaching the girls. Just another really fun thing that I love in my life. So career wise, I am a first grade teacher and I teach at Loveland Primary School. I started my career there and I've been there ever since. So I've taught 10 years at LPS, and I actually went to school there, so that's pretty cool. I love being back where I grew up and where I went to school. Loveland's a really special place and very important to me. So oddly this year, definitely not what I had planned for in my life, but we were supposed to start the school year with a hybrid learning model a full-time schedule. And about 5 days before teachers were to report, we switched over to this hybrid model where students were only going half days. And so I have 3 school-age kids that live in the district, and it left us with quite a childcare conundrum. So I put in for a leave of absence reluctantly. And so I have pictures of my classroom there. You can see the one on the top is, decorated, and the one on the bottom is very stark and bare, and that's how I had to leave things. But I decided to take, my lemons this year and go ahead and pursue my master's, which I was long overdue for. So that's been a really good thing out of what happened with me having to take a leave of absence. And then on the side, there's a small boutique in downtown Loveland called Lemons and Limes. And the owner is actually a parent of one of my students from a few years ago. So I started doing that in the summer, just kind of for fun and one day a week. And then I've been able to continue that this school year. So family history. So my background, my mom's side, German and Irish, very strong Irish on my mom's mother's side, so my grandmother. And then my dad's side, my maiden name is Wiebel, and largely German and a little bit of Polish. I was raised Catholic, so a lot of my traditions are represented through Catholicism and how my parents chose to raise us. So some of the traditions that really stood out to me, especially being the time of year that it is, are just, I remember really big things always around Christmas. So we would sit at the top of the stairs in the morning before we went down on Christmas Day, which is something I've passed along to my own kids. We always went to Christmas Eve Mass, and the Polar Express was a big, really important book in my house, even before it became a movie. So my mom would read it every night along with other books as well. But the Polar Express really stood out to me. And then also monkey bread, which we made for Christmas morning. And so I've carried on that tradition with my own kids. And that is our monkey bread from this year. So like I said, I grew up Catholic, so we did a lot of Sunday masses. I remember going every week. Family dinners, we'd always say our prayer before dinner time. And then a big thing that we tried to do every year was just make that time for family vacations. And so I added a little picture of my kids there from Christmas this year, sitting at the top of the stairs. So, kind of diving right into cultural diversity and the first video, the sum of our parts, a lot of it really kind of hit home with me. It was really interesting to hear the important part of that. Within 7 seconds you are making impressions and taking in impressions, and that is going to lead us to conclusions about people. And I just loved that she kind of opened up that conversation. Seemed really casually, but actually was making a big point about, those first few seconds that you speak with someone. The other thing that I love that she highlighted was just that racial diversity versus cultural diversity, and that focusing on not just that outward appearance. So I think a lot of times people get stuck on what you look like on the outside, but what we're really missing is, what's on the inside, what makes you you. And that was the big thing that she hit home, were what are all of these pieces that make you, right? So I loved that she said many parts contribute to who you are, and you don't walk alone. So it was just kind of a really interesting way to say that every person you meet, every conversation you have, hopefully you're kind of learning from those and taking a piece of that with you, and that's building the character that you have. And then, she just kind of discussed that it's so important to have conversations with people who have different traditions than you and are from different backgrounds, and to ask questions. And sometimes I think we're so afraid to seem naive and to not ask questions and educate ourselves. But really, it would go such a long way if we really invested the time and interest in other people's traditions and cultures. So I really enjoyed that first TED Talk. The second one, it's past time to appreciate cultural diversity. Sorry. This one, again, really kind of struck a chord with me. It was really hard to hear how difficult things had been for Haley Yates, and that she had to conform and, make herself fit into what she thought she had to be in order to be successful or to be paired with classmates in college. And that was, and then also just kind of hearing her talk about the fact that she grew up, in Australia, and clearly her accent does not match what people would picture in their mind. And it just was really kind of heartbreaking to hear how difficult things have been for her at times, because obviously being a white woman, I have not experienced that myself. So it was really enlightening and just something that I was, intrigued and learned a lot about just from hearing her speak. So like I said, Yates, she highlights how people of other races and cultures, they feel pressured to adapt to this mainstream. And I think, I think that's true for anything mainstream, anything pop culture and trendy and whatever. But like, this is such a severe issue that she was, changing things about herself of such importance in order to fit what this mold was that she thought it had to be. And it's just kind of devastating to hear her talk about. There was an Australian study that she mentioned that 2/3 of people surveyed with an Asian background, they admitted to conforming. So I thought that really kind of, shed some light on how she was not the only one who's experienced that. And then she went on to highlight how important cultural diversity can be for business and how it has actually a lot of benefits. So the McKinsey study that she mentioned was with 300 multinational companies, and when the company had a quarter of ethnic diversity, then they were 35% more likely to have higher financial returns. And then I also love how she mentioned what diverse teams can actually bring to the company. So accurate work, being factual and objective. They're innovative, representative of the whole staff and also the customers that you're trying to sell to, whether that be product or service. So I thought that was really interesting to hear the benefits that having a diverse staff, culturally diverse, and not just race wise, but can have on a business. So that was really interesting too. And then finally, her discussion of the bamboo ceiling and, that comparison of the glass ceiling being, shattered for women, that this bamboo ceiling is specific to those with an Asian background in the Western workplace and how difficult it is for them to progress and proceed simply due to race. And so she said that race has 3.5 times more of a negative impact on career progression than gender. And that is astonishing to me. Okay, so moving forward, the challenges of cultural diversity. So in this one, Ting talked about just really highlighting the different attitudes and the prejudice that we have as a society, as a country. So he talked about the tri component of attitudes and highlighted cognitive, which are the assumptions that we make about a group of people or a person. Affective, which are the feelings. Feelings are friendly, neutral, or hostile towards a group of people based on the assumption. And then behavioral, which your behavior and then the way you act is influenced by the assumption towards the group of people. So Ting also talked about how cultural diversity really means many cultures, many races, and ethnicities in a society. And so one of the things that also hit home with me were the different types of cultural prejudice. So the first one being xenophobia, and just that fear of other cultures, animosity towards other cultures because of their differences. And then ethnocentrism, just the belief that your ethnicity is superior. And I think that's something that we struggle with sometimes as a country right now. And finally, racism and the negative, emotions and reactions that people have simply based on a person's race. And then finally, Ting also talked about the different kinds of racism, explicit racism versus implicit racism. And, explicit racism being that negative behavior towards members or group of people with a cultural different background, and they're very intentional. Whereas implicit racism is more under the radar, where you have, unconscious or concealed negative behaviors. And the highlighting of the incident of what happened to the two young men at the Starbucks was devastating, because those are the kinds of things that are happening in our country all of the time. And it just really struck a chord with me. Okay, so then finally, engaging diverse communities. So I thought this was a really interesting read, and I just loved the idea of community planning, and that community planning should be driven by involving those who live in the community. It makes complete sense, right? So they know what's working and what's not. And I loved just the importance of what was highlighted in that you really need to bring in a diverse group of people that represents all cultures in the community, as well as, minority groups that may have some barriers in terms of assisting with this community planning, which I'll highlight in a little bit. But one of a few of the things that were highlighted in community planning is that it needs to be driven by needs and interest within the community. So community members who live in the community are the ones who are going to know that. Again, representing a diverse group of people. getting to know the community, really spending the time to get to know them and what's important to them, engaging potential allies. So I liked this too, finding people that would represent different groups in the community, but then also they might know someone, and that was referenced as the snowball effect. So really being able to gauge more people in the community for the success of the planning. And then involving the community members itself, it's going to lead to new ideas that an outsider who is coming in to try to plan, they would not they would not necessarily have, because they're not actually in the community. Definitely collaboration is super important. And then I also loved that empowerment approach where it was kind of driven that allows for democracy and diversity in planning. So like I said, some of those barriers to community engagement could just be, lack of knowledge of the subject matter. It could be policies, laws, things that actually are feasible in community planning. Transportation, just simply being able to get to the meeting. Location is part of that as well. Another big thing could be communication and a language barrier. Meeting schedules, childcare, trust. So just trusting that people have your best interest at heart and being willing to be vulnerable to that. And then relevance. So, and one of the other kind of big things that stuck out to me was just how important that socialization can be in a community. And so, again, that's why it's so important for us to involve community members from all backgrounds in community planning. So, some similarities that I found from what I watched and read, just, something that I really believe in, whether it's in my own personal life or at school, is just really focusing on what's on the inside for people. Character and values and morals and honesty, those are things that are really important to me. And that's something that I follow in my daily life, is focusing on what is on the inside versus that appearance. And then also, I loved that the belief that we don't walk alone, and that I feel like my life has been significantly impacted by, the relationships I've had, the students I've taught, the families I've been involved with. So that's something I really strongly believe in too, that all of those things are molding us into who we are. Um, and then, in terms of celebrating various cultures, we do spend a good amount of time in December focusing on some different holiday traditions. I teach first grade, like I said. So, one of the big things we do is we do holidays around the world with a variety of countries and learn about their different traditions. So, that's something that we do spend some time on. And then the classroom environment, one of the things that was mentioned was just bringing your whole self, right? Bringing everything about you to work and to school and to your environment. And that's what I believe in for my students. And I love when they are comfortable to be their true, authentic selves, which luckily a lot of first graders really are. And then I think, in really reflecting, I was just thinking about my own community, and I do live in a smaller town. And that I think that we need a significant amount of effort, education, change, because racism is still everywhere and it exists, and that prejudice. And that was something that I feel like we have so much work to do. So just reflecting on those things that I learned about from the videos and the research. So moving ahead, what I'd like to do after learning so much about cultural diversity and what it really means, is that I value that we spend time in December talking about different countries and their holiday traditions, but that could really be moved to a yearly focus. So I think that there's just room for improvement, and that we could be spending more time on that, involving families that we have in our classes to come talk to the class about, their traditions, their culture. So really making that more of a priority throughout the entire year. I think it would be amazing to have a family event night to celebrate a variety of cultures and traditions. So that would be maybe something we could do as a school just to really you know, increase knowledge and awareness and just really have fun with it too, to learn from each other and the different cultures and traditions that are represented in our school. Community wise, I think, we could work as a smaller community and just encourage the city to celebrate various cultures and include making sure whenever we're doing planning a variety members in planning. And then a big thing too, I think in terms of, being a teacher myself, just being provided that continued training to have more awareness and understanding and empathy for my students that do have different backgrounds and maybe don't speak English or cannot relate to the mainstream traditions that most of the students in our class may celebrate. So I think continued education for teachers and staff is really important as well. And then moving ahead, so just reflecting on the standard. So the correlation, this assignment correlated to the standard because it gave me the opportunity to research and evaluate a variety of resources regarding cultural diversity. It gave me a better understanding of what cultural diversity truly is and how I can be sure to create a supportive and inclusive classroom and school. Relevance, this assignment helped me to better understand and reflect on my own personal experiences with cultural diversity, as well as my school and the community where I live. After evaluating and reflecting on the research and videos provided, I have now realized how little my school is doing to educate one another and represent the cultures of all of our families. My community, as well, needs significant improvement in honoring and valuing all of the cultures represented in our community. And then finally, my reflection, learning about the true meaning of cultural diversity and what that actually entails and how individuals are affected by a lack of inclusion of their culture had a very big impact on me. And it makes me really excited about the rest of this class and just how much I know I have to learn. Having the knowledge of what true cultural diversity really is will allow me to be a better teacher, as well as become a leader in my own school and how to create a more culturally inclusive environment for students and families. Hopefully, this can allow for the community I live in as a whole to create more opportunities for inclusion as well as education on varying cultures. And then finally, I have my references. All right, thank you so much. Thanks for watching the video and Happy New Year. Thanks.